In 30 seconds, I can tell if someone is lying to me, if they're genuinely interested in buying or if they're just wasting my time. How? Because I spent 10 years as a psychiatric nurse and I learned to read people's minds through their body language, their voice patterns, and their unconscious tells. Now, my name is Jason James, and today I'm going to teach you the exact psychological techniques that I use to assess patients on psychiatric wards, except now I use them to assess buyers. These are the same skills that helped me generate over 22 million in sales by knowing exactly who to spend time with and who to walk away from. And by the end of this video, my friend, you'll be able to spot a time waster from across the room, identify genuine buying signals that most salespeople miss, and detect lies faster than a polygraph machine. Because when you can read people like I can, selling becomes easy. Now, before I teach you these techniques, you need to understand why psychiatric nurses are the best readers in the world, okay? Look, in psychiatry, your life literally depends on reading people correctly. When someone with schizophrenia tells you that they're fine, but their body language tells you that they're about to become violent, you better know the difference, okay? When someone with depression says they're not suicidal, but their micro-expressions tell a different story, you need to be able to spot that lie immediately. Now, we were trained to look for incongruence. When someone says something that doesn't match with what their body's telling you, because in psychiatry, people lie all the time, right? Not because they're bad people, but because they're trying to protect themselves. They're in denial, or maybe they're just genuinely confused about their own mental state. Sound familiar? That's exactly what happens in sales. Prospects lie to you constantly, okay? They say they're interested when they're not. They say they have a budget when they don't. They say they're the decision maker when they're actually not. They're not trying to deceive you. They're just protecting themselves from making a bad decision or perhaps looking foolish. Maybe you've done this before, right? But here's what most salespeople don't understand. The body never lies. You can control your words, but you can't control your unconscious physical responses. Your pupils, your breathing, your posture, your micro expressions, they all tell the truth, even if your mouth doesn't. But I've identified 5 universal buying signals that work across all cultures, all industries, all personality types. These are hardwired into human psychology, and once you know them, my friend, you'll never miss a buying cue again. So, signal number 1, the forward lean. When someone's genuinely interested in what you're saying, they unconsciously lead forward. This is called approach behavior. In psychology, basically, they call this approach behavior, right? It's literally them trying to get closer to the information that they value. But here's the key. It has to be unconscious. If someone's deliberately leaning forward because they think that's what they should do, you'll see other incongruent signals. Watch for the natural unconscious lean that happens when they hear something that excites them, okay? In psychiatric assessments, we used to gauge genuine engagement versus compliance. Patients who were truly engaged in their treatment would lean in naturally. Those who were just going through the motions would maintain some form of a distance, okay? Signal number 2, the pupil dilation. This is when someone's excited or interested, okay? Their pupils dilate. This is completely unconscious, by the way. They have no control over it. It's controlled by the sympathetic nervous system. That's the same system that controls your fight or flight response, okay? Now in sales, watch for pupil dilation when you mention price, benefits, or outcomes. If their pupils dilate when you talk to them about the results that they'll get, they're genuinely excited. If their pupils constrict, they're probably stressed or uncomfortable, okay? Now here's a pro tip. This only works in consistent lighting. Don't try and read pupil dilation in someone if you're walking, if they're just walking from bright sunlight or something like that, because it won't actually work, all right? Signal number 3, the mirroring effect. When people like and trust you, they unconsciously mirror your body language. So if you cross your arms, they'll cross your arms. If you lean back, they'll lean back. And this is called limbic synchronicity. Okay, what this basically means is a primitive part of your brain trying to create a connection with you, right? But here's the advanced technique. You can test this, right? Deliberately change your posture and see if they follow you. If they mirror your behavior in the next 30 seconds, then they're subconsciously connected to you. If they don't, you haven't built enough rapport yet, it won't work, okay? Now in psychiatry, we use this a lot to build rapport with difficult patients, okay? It allowed us to get them to trust us more so we can give them some guidance, all right? Signal number 4, the voice pattern change. When someone is lying or uncomfortable, their voice changes. It might get higher in pitch, it might get faster in pace, or they might start to use more filler words like things like that, right? But when someone is genuinely excited about your offer, their voice becomes more animated, more expressive. They start speaking with more energy and enthusiasm. Their tone becomes warmer and more engaging. Now, in psychiatric nursing, voice pattern analysis was crucial for suicide risk assessment. Patients who were planning self-harm often had a very flat monotone voice, while those who were genuinely improving showed more vocal variety and energy. okay? Here's signal number 5, the breathing pattern. This is the most reliable signal because it's completely unconscious. When someone is stressed, lying, or uncomfortable, their breathing becomes shallow and rapid. When they're relaxed and genuinely interested, their breathing is deep and steady. Watch their shoulders and their chest, okay? Stress breathing happens in the upper chest. You'll see their shoulders rise and fall. Relaxed breathing happens from the diaphragm. Their belly moves forwards rather than their chest, okay? Now, in emergency psychiatric situations, breathing patterns were often our very first indicator of an escalating agitation. We could predict violent episodes by watching someone's breathing and how it changed during conversation. Now, let me show you the 3 most common lies prospects tell and exactly how to spot them using psychiatric assessment techniques. Lie number 1, I need to think about it. Look, when someone genuinely needs to think about a decision, they look up to the right. They're actually accessing their visual construction area of their brain. They're literally trying to picture themselves making the decision. But when they're lying, they look down to their left, which is where they're accessing internal dialogue, trying to come up with a socially acceptable excuse for why they won't move forwards. Their breathing becomes shallow and they often touch their face or their neck, okay? The real tell is when they what they do with their hands, okay? Genuine thinkers keep their hands open and relaxed. Liars often close their hands into fists or hide them or put them in their pockets, okay? Lie number 2, I don't have a budget. Look, when someone genuinely doesn't have money, they show shame-based body language. Their shoulders slump, they avoid eye contact, their voice becomes quieter, they're embarrassed about their financial situation, right? But when they're lying about their budget, they overcompensate. They sit up straighter, they make too much eye contact, and their voice becomes more assertive. They're trying to convince you they are in control when they're actually not, okay? Now, the dead giveaway is micro-expression of contempt. It's a slight raising of one corner of the mouth. It happens for just a fraction of a second, but it means that they're actually thinking that you're gonna, that you're stupid for believing their lie, right? But look, that's how it is. Okay, lie number 3, I'm the decision maker. When someone is genuinely the decision maker, they display what we call alpha body language. They take up space, they gesture confidently, and they maintain steady eye contact without being aggressive. But when they're lying about their authority, they show beta tells. This basically, they make themselves smaller. They use tentative language like I think or probably, and they look away when they're talking about making decisions, right? Now, the biggest tell is when you ask about the decision-making process. Real decision makers give you clear, direct answers. Fake decision makers get vague and start talking about we instead of I. Now, let me give you some advanced techniques that we use in high security psychiatric units, right? This one's called the baseline technique. Before you can spot deception, you need to establish someone's baseline behavior, okay? So spend the first few minutes of any conversation asking neutral questions and just absorbing their normal patterns of speech, breathing, and body language. Once you know their baseline, any deviation from that is a pattern, right? And you'll know. So if someone speaks normally and slowly and suddenly starts speaking fast, that's a red flag. If they usually maintain eye contact but suddenly start to look away, then pay attention to this, okay? Next, the stress test. Deliberately introduce mild stress into the conversation and watch how they respond. Ask a challenging question or mention a potential obstacle. Genuine prospects will engage with the challenge. Time wasters will do anything to deflect the challenge, okay? Next, the congruence check. Throughout the conversation, look for congruence between their words, their body, and their language and their emotional states. If someone says they're excited but their body language is closed, there's incongruence. But if they claim to be interested and they show no emotional engagement, they're lying, right? Next, the investment test. Watch how they respond when you ask them to invest something, time, effort, or information. Genuine prospects will actually make small investments to move the process forwards. Time wasters will resist any form of investment, okay? Now remember, these techniques aren't about manipulation. They're about understanding. When you can read people accurately, you can serve them in a better way, right? And avoid wasting everyone's time, okay? Now let me give you a real example of how I used these techniques last month. I had a prospect, let's call him David, who seemed like the perfect person on paper. He had a budget, he had the authority, he claimed to be very interested in my program, but something felt off. His baseline was confident and direct, but when we talked about moving forward, his voice got higher and he started touching his neck, okay? Now, look, when I mentioned the investment, his pupils constricted instead of dilating. When I asked him about the decision-making process, he suddenly started using we language instead of I. All the signals told me that he was maybe lying about something. So instead of continuing the sales process, I said, David, I get the sense that there might be something you're not telling me about your situation. What's really going on, buddy? He then paused, and then he admitted that he wasn't actually the decision maker. His business partner was, and they hadn't discussed this investment yet. He was embarrassed and didn't want to seem like he was powerless. Instead of wasting weeks trying to close someone who couldn't buy, I helped him figure out how to present the opportunity to his partner. 3 weeks later, both partners invested $25,000 into my program. The key was reading the signals and addressing the real issue instead of trying to push through resistance, which is what a lot of people do. So there you have it, the Psychiatric Nurse's Guide to Reading Behavior. These techniques have helped me generate over 22 million in sales by knowing exactly how and who to spend my time with and who to walk away from. But here's the thing. Reading people is a skill that takes practice. You need to train your eye to spot these signals, and you need to practice interpreting what they actually mean in different contexts, okay? And that's exactly what I teach in my Closing Incubator program. It's a 12-week intensive where I don't just teach you sales techniques, I teach you how to read people like a psychiatric professional. We practice these assessment skills through live role play, and you can spot deception and genuine interest instantly. Now, I've used these psychological insights to generate over 22 million in sales, and my clients have gone on to generate over 200 million using these exact same methods. If you want to master the art of reading buyers, if you want to stop wasting time on prospects who will never buy and start focusing on the ones who will, then all you got to do is comment psychology below and I'll send you my complete buyer psychology assessment guide. It includes all the signal tells and the techniques I've shared today, plus 15 additional psychological indicators. And if you're serious about developing these advanced people reading skills, if you want the complete system with live coaching, practice sessions, me holding your hand, then let's have a conversation about the Closing Incubator. Because remember, in sales, the person who can read people the best always wins. And when you know what someone is really thinking and feeling, you can serve them better and close more deals. So comment psychology below. Let me teach you how to read buyers like a psychiatric professional, and let's get you started on this journey.